Hello everyone, this is Rob from Pineapple Creations, and welcome to our YouTube channel. I'm going to go over the basics of tools of the trade, to help you make some terrain. First things first, hot things are hot, sharp things are sharp. Always be mindful of this when you are working with your materials. You always want to be safe. On top of that, make sure your environment's clean as you build, because things can get messy, but you do that on your own accord. So we're going to start going over a couple things. First, we're going to start with some things that cut. So the first thing we have here is the hobby knife, or X-Acto blade, depending on what you're used to. They're great tools for cutting very specific lines, grooves, and multiple materials. Another great tool to use is your box cutter. Box cutters are spectacular in cutting those hard to cut things, and you notice my blade has intentional spots where it's supposed to break off. Be mindful of this when you buy your hobby knife. Be safe with what you use. You'll never really need to keep the blade completely extended, so I would suggest using your hobby knife at about the length of your thumb, maybe an inch if that. It's a very useful tool. Next up, we're going to talk about some clippers. You can see I have two different types. These thick ones are really good for cutting wooden dowels, thicker chunks of metal, depending on what materials you're working with. And the smaller ones are more precise, really great for cutting things off of sprues if you want to add sprue from your plastic terrain kits onto your terrain, or more specific cutting. After that, we have our hobby saw, which is really good for cutting large things evenly. It's great for PVC pipe, popsicle sticks to look like floorboards. Really, you'll find a lot of use out of it. The next two tools are hot glue guns. Now you can see in the video that there's two different types of glue guns. One is your pretty standard go-to hobby shop gun, but as you can see in the next part, this glue gun here is a bit more advanced. It has two settings for heat, at a more precise point, which is really great for your more specific gluing jobs. And the great thing about hot glue is it's not just for gluing two things together. You could make lava effects, you could make slime effects, you can make some industrial ooze. It's really versatile. The next two tools I'm going to mention are a bit pricey. I mean, they're like $30 and up, but they're very useful in your terrain making arsenal. The first one is from a company called Woodland Scenics, and it is a hot wire foam cutter. It's a really great tool for carving XPS foam into organic shapes. So you just slide your finger up, put your foam in between the wires, and just cut shapes. And as you can see, it's like a hot knife through butter. It's very simple, it's very effective. You have a lot of potential for making a lot of interesting things with this. I would highly recommend it. I love it. Up next is a Dremel. A Dremel is great for grinding, filing, sanding. Really, so many tools, so many uses are in your Dremel. I don't know where it'd be in terrain making or in this hobby without it. I really love it. It's a great tool. Up next, we're going to talk about some glues. I like using Aleene's Tacky Glue, which is a white PVA glue like Elmer's glue, except it's stronger. It cures better, and it's great for basing, it's great for flocking, it's great for pretty much a good go-to. It's great for gluing XPS foam to itself. Up next we have Loctite Gel Control Glue. It's a super glue, it's a strong super glue, and I like it with the gel control because when you're gluing plastic to itself, it gives you a minute to pose the model or pose the piece before it cures. But the strongest glue I have is E6000. It's great for when you want to glue anything to anything and you don't want it to separate. After 24 hours, it's a strong bond. It's really useful for gluing things to bases. It does melt XPS foam, so just keep that in mind. speaking of XPS foam, it is a great material to build with. It's cheap, it's effective, you could whittle at it, you could work with it with so many different tools. A piece of it, a 2 foot by 2 foot piece of it, goes for about less than $10 in the States, and you will get so much utilization out of this material. I highly recommend getting it where you can. A 4 foot by 6 foot sheet of it goes for about $20, maybe a little less depending on where you are. But what we're going to show you in this video is a very simple way to make rocks. So the cool thing about this foam is you could kind of just rip it apart with your hands and have already a kind of natural looking rock, but it still looks like a chunk of foam. So the next step is to just whittle away at the foam. It's that simple. Take any sharp edges and just bevel them to make them a bit more organic. Another approach is to just put your knife in the foam and just pop it out. And the more variation you do, the more natural the rocks will look, or your future boulders. Another way to make it look more natural in regards to rocks is to take a ball of tin foil, crumple it up, and just roll it over the foam. It's a simple little thing that adds a lot more variance and it makes your rock look like a rock instead of just a chunk of foam. It's quick, it's simple, and it's effective. So once you're done building, well, as you start building, you might want to consider putting everything on a base. A great base to use is MDF board. It's strong, it's durable, it's gonna last. But as you can see, the base of it might not blend nicely into your table. So if you want, you could use your box cutter or any sharp thing to cut the corners at like a 45-degree angle so it blends more naturally into the table. Once you have everything built and the way you want it to be on your base, it's a great idea to have a miniature for scale. This way you can see how your terrain impacts your table, impacts your game. I hope you enjoyed this quick little tutorial, and don't forget to like and subscribe, follow us on Pineapple Creator on Instagram, and happy wargaming.